Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Getting Started with Figure 8 webinar. My name is Justin. I'm hosting with my colleague, Ashley Skiles. Quick note for everybody that's on the phone right now. If you'd like to ask questions, there is a question prompt in your GoToWebinar toolbar. Feel free to toss that in, and we will answer any questions at the end. Additionally, if you or any colleagues are getting on late, there will be a replay of this webinar sent to everyone who registered. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Ashley.
All right, thank you, Justin. So before we get started, we've got a quick agenda here. First, we'll start out with a Figure 8 overview to give you a sense of who we are and what we do. And then we'll do a platform demo. And in that demo, I'll show you a preview of a Figure 8 job. We'll walk through the design of the job, how to launch it, and then how to get your results at the end. And then, like Justin said, we'll wrap up with a few questions. So first thing here is just a brief overview. If you're new to Figure 8 and have just signed up for our trial, we are a human-in-the-loop machine learning platform to create customized, large-scale, high-quality training data. So what that means is that you and your team have a large unstructured data set that you need annotated by a lot of individuals. You can use the Figure 8 platform. Essentially, you design micro tasks for people to work on that data, and using the platform, you can access human intelligence at scale by accessing contributors who are all over the world. And by using Figure 8, you can get really high-quality results. We pride ourselves on quality, and we use test questions, redundancy, and leveled contributors to get you that quality. And we'll walk through all of those things in the course of the demo. So let's go ahead and jump in. When you first log into Figure 8, you will see this page, Create a New Job. And this is essentially just a bunch of different templates for different use cases. We support sentiment analysis, search relevance, data categorization, and so that could be text, it could be images, a variety of data collection and enrichment, data validation, image annotation, and we have some pretty robust tools here as well, bounding boxes, pixel level semantic segmentation, even video annotation. We have transcription, content moderation, and then if none of these quite suit what you're trying to do, you can scroll down here and start from scratch. But before we actually build a job, I want to show you what it looks like from the contributor's point of view. So Figure 8, we call the crowd, people in the crowd, people who actually work on your data, contributors. And this is what they see when they log in to work on a job. So here today what we're going to do is judge and categorize tweets about soft drinks. So we're looking at sentiment analysis. And this is what the job looks like. Here, as a person who set up the job, I've inserted an overview. I have steps for people to take. I want to know if the tweet mentions a soft drink, and is the tweet positive, neutral, or negative. And then I've got my rules and tips. So I want people to know what I mean by positive, for example. All of that I lay out right here. And then I've also included examples so that people can see exactly what I'm looking for and what to choose when they see certain things. If I scroll down past the instructions, then I see my data here. So each one of these is what we call a row of data, and in this case, each of those is a tweet. And again, here are my questions. Does this tweet mention a soft drink? And if I click in, then I'll see more questions that I've built out. So this is the end product that we're aiming for as we build our job. So let's get started with that. When you are in the platform, you can see this bar up top, which is pretty much just the progress in building and launching your job. We start with uploading data, and this is what it looks like before you've uploaded your data. On the Figure 8 platform, we support CSV, TSV, Excel files. In the case of sentiment analysis, you can also import directly from Twitter. We also have a RESTful JSON API, so you can push data that way. And if you want to play around, you can download a sample CSV here and then re-upload it and use that data just to get your trial started. So after I put my data in here, this is what it looks like. So again, we usually talk in terms of rows of data. Each one of these is a row of data, so you can think of like a row on a spreadsheet. Again, in this case, each row is a tweet. The next step is for us to design our job. And we have two ways of doing that. We have the graphical editor, which I'll show you first, and then we also have the code editor, which I'll show you next. And here I've put in the title, some content, so that's pointing towards my tweet for each one, and then a question. Does this tweet mention a soft drink? Yes, no, tweet is unavailable. And in our graphical editor, we support up to one level of conditional logic. So if you recall, when I hit yes earlier, I had additional questions pop down. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add that question, and I'll give you a sense of how this graphical editor works. So I hit add question. This one's going to be multiple choice. And for the question text, I'll put in what is the sentiment of this tweet. Oops. All right. I want positive, neutral, or negative. And you know what? For the way I'm evaluating my answers, I would rather have values here. So I'm just going to switch that out from string to a number. And I want some conditional logic here. So I want this question to only pop up when the answer to the first question, does this tweet mention a soft drink, is yes. Great. And so now I see that this question has populated here. And like I said, this is really easy to use, drag and drop. We also have a WYSIWYG down here for the instructions, and this is where you would populate that. You can work in code here as well if you'd like. But this is where I build out all the instructions that you saw earlier. Now, if I want more than one layer of conditional logic or something a little bit more customized, I can scroll to the bottom of this page and hit switch to code editor. And that will take me to this page. One thing to note is once you switch to code editor and start working in that, you can't switch back to graphical. So just note that when you're working in here. So our code editor works with CML, custom markup language, which is really just an abstraction of HTML, and it's built for form construction, essentially, to make it easier. All of the information you need is over here in Read the Docs, so that will get you started there. And you can see, essentially, this is the same information you saw before, but in CML. If you want to add custom CSS or JavaScript, you can do that here, and then the instructions look the same as what you saw before. So that's how I actually build out the job. I'd like to pause here and talk about quality that I mentioned earlier. We have 3 quality control mechanisms baked into our platform: test questions, redundancy, and leveled contributors. So let's just walk through all of those. A big feature of the Figure 8 platform is test questions. And essentially, these are pre-answered questions designed by you and your team to both quiz and train contributors. And contributors encounter test questions in 2 ways. First, they have to pass a quiz of your test questions before they can even work on your data. And once they pass that quiz, then they continue to see these test questions throughout the life of the job. But of course, they're hidden and people don't know that they're in fact test questions. And this is how we monitor how well people are performing on your job. You can decide the accuracy threshold. So if you want to say people need to be answering 80% of the test questions correctly, if they fall below that 80%, then we kick them out of your job and remove all of their answers from your data. And then they're then replaced with another contributor. So I want to show you what one of these test questions looks like. So here's a question with a tweet. It links to a story about diet soda. Does this tweet mention a soft drink? And I, as a person who has set up this job, I've already answered this question and given a reason why, so that the person taking the quiz or encountering this test question, if they get it wrong, they'll see why they got it wrong and they can learn from that. So in that way, you're using test questions to both test and train contributors. As for the other quality control mechanisms, we have redundancy. So we have more than one person work on each row of data. We typically set that at 3 people, but you can adjust that in the settings section of the platform. And then we also have leveled contributors. So I'll show you that here, again, in the settings section. And we're looking at contributors. So we have 3 levels of contributors here, and they are set by different accuracy thresholds. So the people working at level 1 are working at a 70% accuracy threshold. At level 2, they're working at an 80% threshold, and level 3, they've reached an 85% threshold. So these are the most experienced and highest accuracy contributors. So depending on what data you're working on, how accurate you need it to be versus how fast you want the job to run, you can set all of that here. And these three quality control mechanisms, the test questions, the redundancy, and leveled contributors, all work together to get you really high quality results. I also want to talk about speed and throughput here because the targeting will affect that. There are 5 factors that affect how fast your job runs. The first is targeting, which we just touched on. The second is the amount of work in the job. The third is the number of test questions. The fourth is your job complexity, and the fifth is the price, meaning like how much you're paying contributors. And so let's just talk through each of those quickly. So the first is targeting. Obviously, the more targeted you are with the group of people who can work on your job, the smaller the pool, and often your job may run a little bit more slowly. But if you need something very specific, we're able to accommodate that. So let's take a look here in our settings in our external channel. So we've already talked through the different levels of contributors, but we also have additional settings. So let's say I'm interested, I've got data on the transportation system in France, and so I need people who are in France and can speak to that and like understand what I'm talking about. I can target those people here. Similarly, if all of my data is in French and I need people who speak French, then I would select that here. A second factor that affects speed or throughput is the amount of work. So like I mentioned, people have to pass a quiz in order to work on your data, and that's a barrier to entry for them. That means that they are going to be more likely to work on jobs that have a large amount of work, so once they pass that quiz, they can keep working on your data for a long time. We find that jobs with a lot of rows of data actually go a little bit faster. Another factor that affects speed is the number of test questions. Again, we hide one test question on each page of work, so people will be limited by the number of test questions you have as to how much work they can actually do in your job. So the more test questions you have, often the better. And then also job complexity. If you have a really complex task and you're asking people to do more than one thing for each row of data, often that can take more time, and it's better if people are focused on one discrete task for each row of data. So we recommend that people break up complex jobs into multiple simpler jobs so that contributors can stay very focused as they work on your data. And then lastly, price. You decide how much you pay the contributor per row of data that they're working on, and obviously the more you pay them, the more they'll want to work on your job and the faster your job will go. So now that we talked through all of the quality control mechanisms and throughput factors, let's look at how to launch a test run. So we recommend that when you launch your job, you first launch with just 100 rows of data. And this is because we find that working on the Figure 8 platform is an iterative process. If you launch 100 rows at first, you'll learn a little bit and you can improve your job and then continue to run from there. So you'll see here, I have 100 rows of data that I'm going to launch as a test run. Here's that price per judgment. So again, this is how much I'm paying each contributor for one row of data. And then here's the judgments per row. And this is where redundancy comes in. So I'm deciding that I want 3 people to make a judgment on each row of data. And then you launch your job up here. Here is the monitor page. So as your job is running, this is where you see the progress. So this job is already completed, which is why you see 100% here. But as this job is running, you'll see this percentage increase. You're watching the cost that you've paid contributors here. And I can see my active number of test questions as well as the rows of data that have been complete. Looking at the number of trusted judgments here in blue and untrusted in yellow, and that's the number of people who fell below the accuracy threshold that I have set and then have been kicked off the job subsequently. So I can see all of that right here. I can see the number of judgments by hour, so all of these kind of correspond to when I actually launched the job. And then down here, we have some really helpful information. We've got a contributor satisfaction area. So we give a survey to contributors before they log off your job, and we get feedback that way. And this helps you shape and improve your instructions and your job overall. So here I can see like how clear the instructions are, if the test questions are fair, how easy the job is, if it's clear, if it makes sense, and then how the pay is. And so say this were a 2, then clearly I would be underpaying people for the job that they're doing, and I'd want to increase that pay. Also, if the test questions are fair or not, this is a really useful metric, and I can come over here to the test questions section and get more information on that. So I'm looking at, these are the total test questions I have that are active. I see that most of them are good. I've disabled a few. And then I've also seen that people are missing some and contested some. So those I want to click into and learn more about so that I can improve my job. So you'll see that here, each one of these is a test question, and I can see how many have been missed and contested. And if I click in further to one that's been contested, I'll understand why. So here's a tweet that does not directly mention a soft drink, but refers to another tweet that does mention a soft drink. And so this is causing confusion with my contributors. So once I realize that, then I go back to the instructions and adjust and clarify for edge cases like this. And then that helps my contributors perform better on the job and gets me the information that I need. So again, this is an iterative process. I would go back, I would launch the rest of the rows and watch that here as well. Once everything is done, and this is 100%, I'm going to go to my results page. And here are all of the reports I can download with my final data. This first option is full, so this is if I want all of the judgments on every row of data, so that would give me all 3 judgments on each row of data. But the aggregated report is pretty useful because that pulls out the best answer for each row of data. So again, you've got 3 people working on each row, so this will just pull out the best answer for each of those rows. And then I've got additional information here. Source data, test questions, contributors, all of that. And so this is where you would get that fully annotated, high-quality data back to use for your machine learning model. And so with that, I think I'll leave it there. And Justin, do we have any questions?
We do have a couple. I'm going to start with one we get frequently, which is a pretty basic one. How much does it cost?
Yes. So like I mentioned, you are paying contributors directly. So there are actually 2 parts to the cost of using Figure 8. There's the licensing fee. Since we are a SaaS platform, there's an annual licensing fee for you to access the platform. That's determined by the volume of your data and the specifics of the data. So for example, image annotation would be a little bit different than text annotation. But by working with our sales team and sales engineers and really understanding your data and what you're trying to accomplish with your annotation, that's how we come up to that number. And then the second part of the cost structure is the contributor cost that you saw in the platform. So that I, as a user, I can set, I determine what that is. I can also play around with that, increase it or decrease it as needed. So it's really those two factors. So it's hard to say in a roundabout way like how much it actually costs to run a job. It's something that you can work with our sales team on and get a better understanding of.
Next question is about quality. This person says, I am still worried about the quality of annotations from the crowd. How do I know they're right?
Yeah, so it is kind of, it does feel a little unsettling that you're sending data out to people you never see, and then, they're giving you feedback and trusting that that's high quality. But like I said, we've got these 3 quality control mechanisms baked into the platform. We've got the test questions that work both in quiz mode and work mode, so we continue to monitor performance throughout the life of the job. We have more than 1 person working on each row of data, and then also different levels of contributors. And like I said before, all of these 3 mechanisms work together to get you really high quality results. So even if you're working, say you're looking at level 3 of contributors and they're working at 85% accuracy threshold, it doesn't mean that your final data set is only 85% accurate, because we also have the redundancy and test questions, and all of these work together. So it really does give you high quality results in the end.
All right, and we have one last one, which is, I have my own team of people. Can they annotate my data internally?
Yes. So let me try to pull up the right tab here. There we go. So you can set that here in your settings under the contributors tab. We were looking at the external contributors earlier, but if we scroll down, we see that there's an internal option as well. And so if I only want my internal team to be able to view this, I'm going to deselect external and just share this link with my internal team. A couple notes here. So if you do this, all payment is handled outside of the platform. You wouldn't do like the cost per row within the platform for an internal group that you're using. And then also, while we're on this page, I realized I should just note that we also have NDA channels. This is grayed out right now because that's something that you work closely with our sales team on and our customer success team to get a BPO in place that has signed a non-disclosure agreement, and then you would see that as an option there. And so this is great if you're working with highly sensitive data. If you want to make sure that everything is very secure, we have BPOs who are working in secure facilities, and people are working on computers in an office building rather than, say, like on their laptops at home. So that's an option as well.